Own Way, the podcast with me, your host, Kori McClurg. Welcome back to Get Out of Your Own Way podcast. Today we have a guest, Pam McRae, who I'm actually going to let her talk a little bit about what she does, but how I found Pam was through some of my own journeys, and it just kind of got more and more interesting because her journey is not dissimilar to my own. So I always find it curious when people sort of progress through things in a similar way that I did. So Pam, welcome. Thank you so much for being here. I am curious if somebody approaches you, like on an airplane or something, and they ask you what do you tell them?
Oh, first of all, thank you so much for having me with you, Kori. This is just fantastic. I struggled with that, actually. And now what I say, the majority of the time, what I say is I help individuals change their relationship with alcohol. And I keep it really short and sweet and simple because that opens the door instead of saying we are the problem if someone is struggling with alcohol. It's just like, oh, that sounds really interesting. Tell me more. And I found that that's opened up a few doors.
Really? That's interesting. Yeah. People are more curious.
Yes, because I don't give a lot of detail. I don't, and again, everyone's different, but I don't say I help people stop drinking because stopping drinking can be really scary, even though you want to.
Oh, that's just a great way to put it. I'll have to use that one. That's great.
Yeah.
What is your approach with it, or kind of your philosophy with your clients whenever, what do you think attracts them to you? And when you get started with them, kind of what's your going in approach with them?
I think my style is very just no nonsense, casual, and a real sort of focus on I've probably been there, done that, and bought the t-shirt, sold the t-shirt for more booze, and then finally changed my relationship with alcohol. So letting them know that they're not alone is really key, more so because that was something that I experienced so much. I truly felt alone. I didn't think anyone would be able to understand what I was thinking and what I was feeling, and being able to let them know that it's okay and you're not alone allows anyone that I come in contact with to sort of become at ease. And then my next step is just letting them know it's not their fault, which is a really big hurdle. But I always like putting that out right at the beginning to just say, this is what we're going to learn to be able to believe. Because right at the beginning, from my perspective, all my issues with drinking was my fault. Mm-hmm. I was the one that drank. I was the one that bought it. I was the one, it was totally me. And overcoming that was big, but slowly we got there.
Do you find that feeling of aloneness and that kind of the weight of the world on your shoulders, do you find that that's sort of broadly applicable, like even outside of the context of alcohol? Like, I'm sure that your clients are dealing with other things too. And I'm curious if you find that feeling is kind of broadly applicable.
I think it's really broadly applicable. And one of my main understandings of the reasoning behind it is we don't ask for help. Society has placed this rule on us that to ask for help is a sign of weakness.
Yep.
And being able to overcome that and recognize that asking for help or guidance or assistance or companionship is actually a huge sign of strength.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, that kind of feeling isolated out of fear of rejection or fear of being weak, or spot on. I mean, I've certainly felt that. I mean, still to this day can feel that, at times like, oh, I should have this figured out by now, right? Like, I shouldn't be, finding somebody to help me with this.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is, so how did you get into coaching?
I actually just stumbled across it. So I changed my relationship with alcohol. Gee, I'll be coming up 8 years this November,
Well,
which is just mind boggling. In that process and within that success, it was all done through This Naked Mind and Annie Grace's programs. And I just became more involved with the Facebook groups that were available at that time. And then all of a sudden I got an email from at that time, the head coach saying, you know what, we're looking for coaches. Are you interested? And I thought, you know what, I have no idea what a coach is. I have no idea, but sure, I'll play along. What is it? And then went through the interview process to apply. And there was just something in my gut that said, this is your next right step. This is what you need to do. And I'd been running a very successful childcare business for 15 years. I guess at that point, it was probably about 10, 12 years. But there was just something that said, you need to do this. And I had no idea what I was getting into, literally went in blind. And it has been the best decision I have ever made.
that's fantastic. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So it's fair to say you're enjoying what you're doing now.
I absolutely loved it. And I loved running my own childcare business. That was we would laugh every day and giggle and get in trouble. And, it was fantastic. But I knew there was something else. And I just thought, you know what, let's just take this chance and try it and see what happens. And my goal was to just do it part-time, continue on with my childcare business, and then slowly wean out of that and retire from childcare and then just do coaching part-time. And everything went backwards and I ended up retiring from my childcare business 2.5 years early and have not looked back. So I've been doing coaching now full-time and it's just fantastic.
Well, it's pretty amazing that you were even willing to say, let's just see what happens. I mean, that's kind of a scary step.
It was really scary. And I really played it through in my mind of, what does it feel like if I do take this on? And I would sit with that feeling, and that was one of the gifts of becoming alcohol free, is actually feeling your feelings, and knowing what that is like. So I would say, what does it feel like to become a coach? What does it feel like to take the leap and try it full time compared to, going with the flow and continuing on just doing my daycare business and doing this part time? When I really sat with those feelings, I just thought, you know what, I've got to do this. And then my mind, like our human minds do, it goes to the negative. What if this happens? What if this happens?
Mm-hmm.
And I was able to come up with answers to like the worst case scenario. So I was like, you know what? I've got this.
Yeah. And the what if could be, what if it works out? What if I really love it? Yeah.
And that's something that we say to so many, I've said it to so many of my clients because they come in with a what if I fail? And I say, what if you fly?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I wasn't able to, it's do as I say, not as I do kind of thing. I wasn't able to incorporate that with my thinking until later. But all of a sudden I was like, you know what, this can work. We can do this.
Yeah.
Let's try.
Yeah. And again, kind of applicable to everything, right? Like career change, deciding to change your relationship with alcohol, deciding to change your relationship with food, deciding to, change your relationship with your spouse, like, kind of the similar feelings all around.
It's so common on so many levels. And just being able to, now I really resort to just trust your gut. What does it say? I went through that when I changed my relationship with food and I went whole food, plant-based. That was, it was the same thing.
So how did that start for you? I mean, that was that was even before, right? Like that was kind of the start of your wellness journey, maybe?
Yeah, it was 100% the start of my wellness journey. And I think the way it really started was I didn't want to admit that alcohol was a problem. So I thought if I change the way I eat and just go whole food, plant based, and learn all about that, I will start to feel better. In that process, recognizing I do feel better, not only about what I'm consuming, but what, the whole planet
Mm-hmm.
and, different industries that I cringe now. But that sort of started on that, you know what, we've got to start taking care of ourselves and looking for it. And once I had changed my relationship with food and started to learn a little more, I went, you know what? I think alcohol's the next thing that's got to go. And it
Mm-hmm.
had been glaring me in the face the whole time, but I wasn't ready to see it.
Yeah. Yeah. What I mean, what was that kind of early steps even with food? You know, how was that for you? What was that a challenge, or were you just like, nope, you know, I'm fine changing my diet? Like, was that a difficult transition? Was it a learning process? Like, how did that feel for you?
It was definitely a challenge and a learning process because I didn't realize how much was truly not whole food plant based.
Mm-hmm.
Like we can all say a broccoli, yeah, that's,
Yeah.
that's whole food, and I don't eat a lot of processed foods, but just starting to look at labels
Mm.
and some things that I thought would have been okay are all of a sudden, no, you know what? That's that's
Mm-hmm.
part of what I want to leave behind. That's not what I want to put in my body now. And recognizing all kinds of hidden things. So it was a bit of a learning curve, very easy learning curve for me.
Mm-hmm.
I found it very interesting, society's views. And when I say society, I sort of mean my community, my friends, my family. Like you can't do that. You're gonna die.
Yeah.
It's not healthy for you. The old age question: where are you going to get your protein from?
Uh-huh.
It's like, oh my goodness, I'm fine. I'm healthy. I'm okay. So
Uh-huh.
being able to deal with that, which now with the gift of hindsight and being able to look back, it was very similar to changing my relationship with alcohol. Like, why are you doing that? What's wrong with you?
Mm-hmm.
It's like nothing's wrong with me. I just want to choose better for myself. And I
Mm-hmm.
use that word choose very specifically because this is something that I have a choice over. We all have choices.
Mm-hmm.
And this choice works for me.
Yeah, that's interesting. How, like, when you get in those situations where you see your friends and family and even people that are suffering, right? Like they're suffering either with a relationship with alcohol or heart disease or diabetes or something, and like you know what the solution is. Like, what is your reaction to that? I mean, how do you go into those situations? I mean, sometimes even people will bring it up, but they are kind of being cagey about it. Like, what is your philosophy when you are having those kinds of interactions with people?
It's frustrating because, like you said, the answers are out there, but it just needs to be discovered for that individual. So my tactic, I guess, if you could call it a tactic, is to just share a part of my story or my experience and put it back on myself. I can remember when I felt,
Mm-hmm.
I experienced, I thought, and then I did this, and it seemed to really work for me.
That's perfect. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's perfect.
Because we can't say to someone, it's, pardon me, I had friends of the families that this was, I don't know, a year or 2 years ago that got the all clear after a huge breast cancer scare and
Mm-hmm.
radiation and chemo. And they all went out and celebrated mid morning drinking Caesars, which is a Canadian drink,
Yeah.
just like a Bloody Mary.
Yeah.
and just had a huge party. And I thought, really?
I know.
I just shake my head and,
Yeah.
go, wow. So the next time I saw them, I was like, wow, you know what? And they would ask, are you still doing that not drinking thing? And so casually I brought it up, you know what? Yeah, we've got sort of a lengthy, distant family history with cancer. And I discovered alcohol is really linked to cancer and dropped it. So again, put it back on me, but
Yeah.
just planted that seed.
Yeah. Yeah. Good for you. That's those are tough waters to tread. I experience it myself every day. Like you said, I
Yeah.
have a friend now has breast cancer, just had surgery, and it's tough. It's really tough to
Oh,
watch people suffer.
it's so sad. And when we know there are other ways to, definitely not cure it, but not allow it to continue, or not, cause more harm.
Right. Right. Prevent it to begin with. Yep.
Yes.
I think that a lot of times people that have struggled with diet or alcohol or any, I'll just say, counterproductive or destructive behavior, and to which we see our friends and family doing. I think that, and those of us that are kind of maybe on the other side of it, or have changed how we think about it, sometimes I think we can have almost a distrust of our gut, right? Like because we know that the hoops that our brain will jump through, right, to justify our destructive behavior. I find that sometimes people are like almost reluctant to trust their gut. I mean, because they've gone down this path before. How do you deal with that personally, and how do you kind of teach your clients about that kind of that balance of like, is this my gut? Is this just my brain trying to justify my poor decisions?
Such a great question. And it's not an easy sort of one switch, one sentence, one, 1 minute conversation to say, okay, this is how you can trust your gut. What it comes down to me is being able to recognize and explain to my clients that our brain, our gut is based on what has happened in the past. And so many times we don't either don't have the success or don't have the focus of what we have succeeded on. So moving forward, because coaching is all about looking forward and not looking back. Moving forward, my biggest goal for any of my clients is to set them up for success. So if we're talking about changing our relationship with alcohol, if normally they drink at 5 p.m., success is not drinking until 5:10. That's success. And being able to really sit with, how does that feel that I didn't drink for 10 minutes? That's amazing. And then all of a sudden they recognize that feeling of, oh, that feels really good. Look at what I have done. And then we propel forward with that success. And with that success allows our sort of gut feeling to say, hey, I can follow you, because look at what we've done. We're rewiring those neural pathways to say there is success here. I can be trusted, because so much of it boils down to that lack of trust of self, because we have not been successful.
Do you find a reluctance sometimes in clients to even celebrate those moments, celebrate those 10 minutes?
Oh, I definitely. It's again goes back to society of not wanting to be able to celebrate what you have done. We've always been told, don't celebrate yourself, don't boast, don't brag. That's not proper. That's not kind. It's not, it's none of those things. But it is okay. There's nothing wrong with it, and tying it into the whole food plant-based, if you're changing your relationship with food and you want to go whole food plant-based, and all of a sudden somebody serves you something that is not 100% whole food and you eat it, it's not the end of the world. it's okay.
Yeah.
Let's learn from that and let's move forward. Let's recognize what we have discovered and then take that forward.
Yeah. Did you find that you struggled with that? I mean, early on when you started trying to change your diet and having those kinds of struggles of, maybe you would eat the whatever, right? Whatever was given to you, or you have a craving. And at what point did you kind of start learning how to, be okay with the fact that you messed up, and learning to celebrate successes? Like, how did that develop for you?
It was slow. I mean, the whole act of just celebrating success, as I mentioned, doesn't happen right away, but just being able to focus on what I have accomplished compared to, going out and ordering a veggie burger. I'll back up just for a sec. The area that I live in is a huge farming and wine country. Huge, huge. So being whole food, plant-based and not drinking is just like, who is, like, did you fly in from outer space and why do you live here? So being able to give myself grace around just #BecauseHuman. Look at how well I've done. When I go out to eat at local restaurants, mind you, it's getting so much better. But even if I decide to have some French fries and something was fried in there, it's not going to be the end of the world for me. I eat French fries once every 6 months, maybe.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
Yeah. So something I teach is, you're kind of in this balance. Like, I'll talk about it in relationship with that, with alcohol. So with alcohol, of course, we don't have to eat. I mean, we don't have to drink, right? So it's easy to just kind of cut that off. And then once you cut it off, the physiological, desire, drops off pretty quickly, right? And then you're just left to contend with kind of some of the psychological habit or craving or social pressure. I find that with food, sometimes it can feel trickier for people because, right, there's not this like just very clear line, and like you were saying, unless you are just super, super diligent with reading every label, and, sometimes you're going to get things, and not to mention just a huge amount of self-awareness that sometimes you have to, bring to bear to know what things kind of trigger some of those, physiological urges. So, I teach people, like, you're kind of contending with two things here, on the diet side, with this whole physiological thing, because we are driven to like eat the most calorically dense thing, in our environment. So I find people, and it kind of depends on what it is, and it kind of depends on the person. But, and even with myself, I'll find there are just certain things that if I eat it, I'm not going to die, right? Because I ate that one thing one time, but it makes it so much harder when I do to like kind of get back on track, like if I happen to be traveling, and we get off the plane, I'm starving, and I eat something that has a lot of salt and fat in it, then it's like my brain is like, oh, salt and fat, like we're going all in for that now, like. And so, then it's like a struggle. Then you're like have all this mental energy to bring that back in. Do you find that for yourself? And like, do you like, have you found things that are kind of, triggering? And for that matter, do you have clients that maybe thought that, oh, I just want to be able to like, drink socially, and then, come to find out, that's really probably not a great idea for me. What's kind of been your experience with that up and down roller coaster with food or alcohol?
It's definitely up and down, and I refer to it like the open door syndrome. As soon as you crack open that door, it gives you the ability to put your foot in it and open it all the way. So you have that decision to either pull your foot out of the way and close it, or deal with what it feels like to have that open door. And recognizing that, when we're looking at food and alcohol, the big difference is we need food. We have to survive on food, but what is your next best step? So if there is a situation that, like you said, got off of a plane, absolutely starving, have to grab something that's not your best choice, that's okay. But what is your next best step after that? And recognizing that it can be a slippery slope. So if you are able to catch yourself right away and say, even just, and I've done that. I've been traveling too. And it's recognizing that this situation may occur. I've learned from it. So now I pack protein bars, and I always sure I have tons of water, and I'm always, if I'm able, I bring fruit depending on where I'm traveling to. But just, people will look at my bag and there's 3 or 4 different types of protein bars, and they're all whole food, plant-based. And it's like, really?
Yep.
Because I've walked through that path before where I've gotten off and I've been starving and I'm looking at my options to eat and there's nothing. So I grab something and it's like, yeah, I'm going to pay for this.
Yep. Yeah, that's so interesting. That whole idea of I recognize the situation for what it is, and it doesn't need to be an excuse to just like pile on the self-shame. Instead, it's this opportunity to say, okay, what can I do different in this? Like, obviously this is a challenging situation, so what am I going to do? Okay, I'm going to pack a bunch of food for myself, That's a difficult hurdle for people. For some reason we get stuck in this like all or nothing kind of thinking where, well, I messed it up, so, Katie barred the door, I might as well just, go all in and with my destructive behavior. And then, at some point in the future, I'll like, start again. I'll start fresh or whatever. Yeah. I find that is almost a habit as much as any of the substances involved, that habit of all or nothing kind of thing.
Again, it's just sort of the way we think, and it's, well, I've opened the door, so I may as well just go all in. And it's something that we also do just in life. We want to succeed at something. So we join a gym, we want to go all in. We falter, well, we may as well just, try again another time. That all or nothing mentality is on both sides of the coin. So recognizing that and just saying, you know what, I don't want it for this side. I had to crack open that door. My next best step is to take what I need and close that door and just continue moving forward.
Do you find, I'm curious to know what, maybe for yourself or for your clients, how much does like a sense of identity like play into change? Like so many people, if you've been, a drinker for your entire adult life and a lot of your, social circumstances revolve around that. And like you've almost attached some of your identity to that, or, somebody whose diet is obviously a destructive part of their life, maybe they consider themselves like, I don't know, maybe barbecue or something is their thing, right? And they tie so much of their identity to that. Like, how have you seen that like come up for people, and how much do you see like a resistance to change because of that fear of changing identity? And, how do you, have you seen it show up, and how do you work through that?
Fantastic. Identity is so wrapped up in things that we do, be it drinker or, king barbecuer, and being able to first recognize that that is an identity I hold of myself. And then how does that identity truly make us feel? If we're looking at, like, I was known as the beer drinker, and hand Pam a beer, she can put you under the table. I
Mm-hmm.
held that proudly. It's like, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
look at me. Isn't
Yeah.
this great? But when I really was able to begin to identify those identities, those labels that I had put on myself, did I truly like them? And how did they make me feel? And then going about and discovering what other identities I could resonate or would like to explore, because it's very different. So I try to avoid changing identity. I
Mm-hmm.
try to just add to how else could I
Yeah.
identify myself?
Yeah. Or maybe even like what part of that identity is, making you feel good or bad, like
Yeah.
what all is wrapped up in that, that it's kind of funny that like George Wendt, just died the other day, who's Norm from Cheers, and that identity, that like being that person who is reliably at the bar every day at 5 o'clock, and like that consistent fixture. And to a big extent, it wasn't even so much about him like drinking beer every day as much as it was like him being like the reliable guy, and like when you really kind of dig into that for yourself, and you realize, oh yeah, it's really not so much about the beer drinking thing. It's about the fact that I want connection with people, that I
Yeah.
want to be that for them. I want to be um, the reliable guy in their life. Yeah, it's so interesting how we tie up our just our identity and our self-worth into what we happen to do, what the habit that we've happened to fall in. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. And being able to, I mean, you brought up a great point using the example with Norm. What happens if we just remove alcohol from that? He's still Norm. He
Mm-hmm.
still can show up at 5 o'clock. He can still sit at his exact specific bar stool. He can still chat away. So being able to hold that identity and just choose a different beverage.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It is pretty funny how the creators of that show had the bar owner who was, had was a teetotaler and had stopped drinking,
Yeah.
Yeah, so much going on with that show. Super interesting. That's sure it was why I was so successful for so many
Yes.
years. Um, yeah. So I mean, what's next for you? Kind of what's going on? How are you? Um, how do you, see kind of coaching, I'll say kind of broadly, especially as it relates to behavior change, kind of, moving, like what's your kind of take on the state of the state?
I think for my goal, it's always been a dream for me to be able to continue to spread the word, to just allow individuals to recognize it's not their fault if they're struggling with alcohol. And there is a different way other than shame and beating yourself up, and be able to take it. I mean, I have this crazy vision of one day, you'll be watching a movie, and instead of them saying go to AA, they'll
Mm-hmm.
say, look up This Naked Mind.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, to me, that would be so amazing, because it's such just a different methodology. So it's not only for myself, but for anyone, just spreading that word that there's a different way out there. I'd love to get into schools. I'd love to get into police departments and court systems and just say there is a different way.
Yeah. 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 And what do you feel is like the destructive aspects of AA or any other program for that matter that kind of places the responsibility solely on the individual?
I think when we are made to feel inadequate, in any situation, it makes us feel less than. And when we feel less than, what do? We reach for a tool that will make us feel better, and that tool is alcohol. And the hamster wheel just keeps spinning forward, and doesn't give us a time to step off. So just having that acknowledgement of, it's okay, it's not my fault, I'm okay, I'm actually a good person. It just so happens I'm addicted to an addictive substance. Having that shift, I think, is the beginning of just immense change.
Certainly, I agree with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Consistently being told you are bad, you are wrong, you are inadequate. If we did that to a child from the time they could start to comprehend, how would they thrive and succeed in life?
Right.
The same goes with an adult. If we're constantly saying you are bad, you are wrong, you are broken, you are
Yeah.
awful.
Yeah. Why
We're
can't you
not
get
going
your
to
shit
get
together?
anywhere. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. This is
Yeah.
all your fault. You've
Yeah.
ruined whatever this is again.
Yeah.
Look at what
Yeah.
you did. And it's like, no,
Yeah.
that's not the way forward. So I want to just keep spreading the word and just keep planting seeds that there
Yeah.
is a different way.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fantastic. I'm right there with you. This whole idea that there's nothing wrong with you. Your body is responding exactly as it has evolved to, in relation to this environment that we're in. It's unprecedented, this modern environment. I mean, it's crazy to me to think about, sort of, even just in context with alcohol, like the very humble, right, beginnings of maybe fermentation and
Yeah.
how that is now, I mean, one liquor store in one, little town is enough alcohol to, like, kill people, right? I
Yeah.
mean, so it's just totally mind blowing that, like, for some reason we think that that's our fault, like our individual fault, because
Yeah.
this dramatic change in just this crazy modern environment. Yeah.
Yeah. I think things are slowly starting to shift.
Yeah.
I think the sober curious movement is, really kicking into gear. The one thing that bothers me about that, I mean, I love it, don't get me wrong. The one thing that concerns me, I guess might be a better word, is people that are starting to get sober curious and then all of a sudden realizing, oh my goodness, I can't. I
Mm-hmm.
can't take a break. And the
Yeah.
fear that instills, and and there we go, hop on the hamster wheel. Oh my goodness, this is my fault. So being able to find those people to say, you know what, it's okay.
Yeah. Yeah, that's super interesting. Yeah, and I think so relatable to food too, where,
Oh,
um how many people have said they're going to do, veganuary, and then, like, they're like a few days into it and they're like, craving, having these crazy cravings and stuff, and it's so much harder. Or dry January, like you were saying, like,
yeah,
and it ends up being so much harder. And then again, like, the hamster wheel of shame kicks in. Of course, I find that, and I've even written about this, like, how many times we have, whether it's, it can be applicable to alcohol as well, but, like, you're waking up in the morning and you're like, your clothes are tight. And so you're like, okay, I'm on a diet today. Dang it. Like, today's the day. And then, like, you're part of the way through the day and you've blown your diet, and, cause you ate the cupcake in the break room or whatever. Right. And then that shame cycle kicks in so fast, you're just right back in it. And then you're, screw it, I'm going to go to the bar and, eat French fries and mozzarella sticks and, and a few cocktails to make myself feel better, because I ate a cupcake. like you
yeah,
could have eaten a cupcake and, like, gotten over it and been so much better. But then we just, like, compound our problem by, just, like you said, the door's thrown open. So
yeah.
whatever.
Once the doors open, I can remember
Yeah.
a client, and I'll never forget this story that he shared with me. and he's now, I think he's 2.5 years free. But he did a calculation on what a little mini bottle of his thing was. He used to love to go to the gas stations and buy little bottles of sake. That was just his thing.
Yeah.
And he did an analogy after a data point, which is just to clarify, when we drink when we don't want to. And the cost of this, I don't know, I think it was a $2 bottle of sake, what that ended up costing him. And it ended up costing him something crazy like $1,500.
Yep.
Because that opening that door with that little bottle then led to that moment of just screw it. And now I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this. And, as we mentioned, got on the hamster wheel. And when he was able to really look at what that door opening cost him, it was such an enlightening moment for him to just say, do you know what? I'm going to close this door now. And now I know what it feels like when that door gets open and what the repercussions can be. So now I'm just going to close that door and choose something else. What is my next right best step?
Yes. Oh my gosh, that's so good. I have done that calculation myself. I did if for just a year, you avoided all the doctor visits, you avoided the insulin injections, you avoided, whatever. And I even took like a pretty meager estimate. I mean, the estimate like for diabetes, I think is somewhere along the lines of like $12,000 a year it takes to manage like type 2 diabetes. I said, let's say it's not even that. Let's say it's like half that, right? If I just invested that money like in the stock market at the typical return over the last, 50 years in the market, I think I had something like $250,000 you would have, at the end of whatever, 25 years or whatever. I mean, literally, this is how much money we are giving up by, continuing down this like destructive path. And it's just so mind blowing when you look at it like in those kinds of terms where, this little bottle it literally cost me, 100 times that because I let the door open a little bit. Yeah. It's crazy. It is so crazy.
It is. And it's being able to, everybody reacts differently to different ideas of what proof there is. You can look at sleep apps or Oura rings or Fitbits or, anything. And all of a sudden you see your heart rate go down, or all of a sudden you see your blood pressure go down.
Yeah.
Or blood pressure settle, or your bank account raise.
Yep.
All of a sudden it's like, wow, really?
Yeah. It's so true. I mean, I'm always an advocate for people. Go get your blood work done. Go, you will see exactly what's going on in your body. And then you just start making little changes. And then go do it in 6 months, a year. And you will see, like you said, the black and white proof in the pudding is right there that your cholesterol dropped. Like you said, if you quit drinking, how much money you have because you're not, oh my gosh, when I think about all the money that I have spent over my lifetime. I mean, it's insane.
Yeah, I don't want to go there. I still have, when I first started 7.5 years ago, I got an app, like a tracker of, where you can track your days and your money. And I haven't deleted it because I like to have it. And again, as a coach, I reference it a lot. If it was just me, it would just sort of be at the other end of my phone and probably never look at it. Yep. But it's probably sitting at something like $75,000 or $80,000 now.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
And I just think, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
I know. It's crazy.
And that's a drop in the bucket. That doesn't include cab fares or extra food or lost work or personal situations that came up. And I just think, wow, isn't that crazy?
Yeah. Yeah, that's so it is insane. But also tracking, that's a great thing to talk about. So, in a lot of it's kind of this feeds into this all or nothing mentality, but you find people I know AA likes to do this, but other organizations also like to do this, relating to alcohol or food, where having a sequence of days, how many days do you have? And like, in AA, you get the coin. And I think, that, Overeaters Anonymous, right? They have a similar, concept where like, how many days can you go, and that's kind of the metric, right, that you're tracking. And which I think on the face of it could be fantastic, but then what happens when you mess up a day, right? And that all of the previous time is kind of flushed down the toilet. I mean, how have you found that to be with you or your clients? And what do you tell people about having data points right after so many days of abstinence?
Yeah, such a great topic, and I mean it's really individual. But my take on a data point or a slip up is it's not a failure; it's an opportunity to learn. It is. People talk about the word trigger. I can't go there because I'm going to be triggered.
Uh-huh.
Be it a restaurant if you're changing your relationship with food, be it a bar if you're changing your relationship with alcohol. And my thinking is, let's go. Mm-hmm. Like, let's learn. What are we thinking? What are we feeling? What are we hearing? What is that trigger? And let's learn from it. And if you've had 5 days, 30 days, 10 years, and then all of a sudden you drink or you eat something that really shouldn't have been eaten, it's like, okay, what happened? Mm-hmm. It's not, why did you do that? Yeah. It's let's learn from this. You still have your success. Your success, again, whether it was 5 days or 10 years, hasn't gone anywhere. It's still yours. Yeah. But there was obviously something that your brain went to, I need comforting. I reached for an old tool. Let's discover what that is and let's work with that so we can set ourselves up for success the next time.
Yeah, isn't that so interesting? People get some success and they feel like they kind of have things figured out, right? There could still be something new, right? There could still be just some variability, right? In kind of a unique set of circumstances, so that when you're in a particular environment or situation, something was different, and you needed, that whoever it was, that person felt like they needed, like you said, comfort in that time. Do you find that there's a way for people to kind of to approach those situations? Like, what do they need to be conscious of? Or maybe it's just a kind of consistent sort of consciousness and self-awareness of how do you can you predict, I guess, those kinds of situations, those slip ups or those triggering environments, or especially with somebody who's had quite a bit of success.
I think being aware, we call them FFTs, friggin' first times. Being aware when you are entering into, if you are able, what is happening when you're entering into a first time. You're going to your first wedding, your first funeral, a first that's planned, that's, you can see in the future, being able to set yourself up for that, for success. If it's something that happens, all of a sudden you're sitting around on a sunny Sunday afternoon and a whole group of friends just arrive at your house and say, you know what, today's the day I'm swimming in your pool, let's party. That's something that's just come out of the blue. And it's like, oh, you're like, I'm not prepared for that. So being aware of no matter what happens, chances are it's a first and it's okay because we can learn from it.
Yeah, that kind of always a student mentality.
Yes. Yeah. And recognizing life, like, I have never had a day just like today. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I've had a day that has been this date, but has it been this date on this day at this time with this weather? So giving yourself that grace and compassion to just say, hey, you know what? Okay. I'm actually okay. This is
Yeah.
new for me. I'm going to get curious around this.
Yeah. Do you find that kind of dials some of the angst down around potential slip ups?
Curiosity to me dials down a lot because the way, and I don't understand why, but the way our brain has worked, we can't have curiosity and judgment at the same time. It doesn't work that way. So being able to consistently invite curiosity into
Yeah.
any situation dials down any angst, any shame, any, oh my goodness, what's going to happen? It's like,
Yeah.
instead of having that tenseness around it, invite curiosity to, I wonder what's going to happen today.
Yeah. Yeah.
When we bring in that lightness, it shifts and it opens up opportunities instead of holding dread over us.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I love that characterization, that lightness, that that kind of I think that some of that comes with a little bit of confidence though, right? Like
Oh,
that
definitely.
you know it's going to be okay, right? Like
Yeah.
that is interesting and great point that you can't really hold curiosity and judgment at the same time. So
No.
pick what feels better.
Yes.
Yeah.
What settles better with you, and always leading with grace. I always go with the visual of, and I always go back to kids just because it can be such a great analogy when we look at a child that's learning to, that's growing and learning to walk, and they try to walk and they fall down. We don't literally kick them down and say, that's it, you're never walking again. You're
Right.
doomed to crawl for the rest of your life. We reach out with a hand and say, let me help you up. And that was fantastic that you tried.
Yep. Yep.
And being able to offer ourselves that same kind of kindness. Oh, you tripped. Oh, you fell. Isn't that interesting? Take a minute and look back and say, I wonder what I tripped on. What can I learn from this? Oh, there's a big rock in the middle of the sidewalk. Oh, I can learn to keep my eyes more focused on where I'm walking. Isn't that interesting? Yeah.
That's fantastic. So what would you tell somebody who, yeah, they've tripped numerous times. They're kind of tired of tripping. They've been down on themselves and they're thinking about maybe reaching out for some help or some coaching. Like, what's kind of your advice or what you would tell people that are sort of okay, maybe I'm tired of tripping, so now what should I do?
I think one of the first things that I would say is, like, congratulations, you're becoming aware. And then consistently throw the message around that it takes strength to ask for help. And that is an incredible thing to do.
Well, Pam, I'm not going to take up any more of your day. Thank you so much for being here. This has been fantastic. I always love your bits of wisdom. You have certainly been so helpful to me. So I know that anybody that hears you will take something away from this. So thank you so much.
I've loved it. Thank you so much. It's been my honor, truly, to be here with you. Much appreciated.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Well, we'll say goodbye to our guests and we'll talk later.